Hello everyone, this is Emperor Haterius, and this is my session report on the very first session of Dungeons & Dragons that I dungeon mastered, being a first time DM. And I would like to state that I tried to record it with the audio, but the audio screwed up on me on the system. So here I am going to be recapping the events through use of Minecraft because it uses a grid system, and that's the easiest way I can show my viewers since I'm lacking in the video and whatnot editing department. So let's get started. Our characters find themselves in a small room in the dark. The characters in question are a Kenku rogue arcane trickster, a chameleon folk artificer rogue hybrid, a ghostwise halfling shadow sorcerer, a diamond gemstone dragonborn paladin, Oath of Conquest, and a mouse folk. That's who was in the party this session. The next session, hopefully, you'll have the rest of the party. So our characters find themselves in a small room in the dark, hands bound together with their arms straddling over wooden bars that cross the room. It's a small room, and these bars, there are two of them on either side of the room, host these captives while their hands are bound over the bars. So they are locked into it. So they have to escape their bindings. They have their hands bound together with what feels like strips of cloth, and their arms are raised upright in the air with a wooden bar going through their arms, so their arms are straddling them. They can't pull themselves free because they're bound tightly. They can move themselves around, though, with the bar through their arms. So a lot of the characters start trying to fidget around. After realizing that they were bound to this bar in the room that reached from one wall to the next, they attempted strength checks to pull themselves out of their bindings. Mostly they were unsuccessful. Our Kenku arcane trickster uses his prestidigitation cantrip to form a tiny blade in his hand, and he uses that to cut himself free, and he is the first to cut himself free from this binding. And when he freed himself, he moved to the corner of the room and he enacted a stealth check and watched to see what was going on. Our halfling, now that I think about it, should have been hanging up in the air with the way that I set up the room, and I realized that after the fact, which is hilarious, and just the way things are with your descriptions. They tried to jump as well. They found that their arms were still caught because the bar went in between the arms, so they decided to start gnawing away at the bindings. So I had them do several checks amongst themselves. And while they're doing that, they're also peering around the room. And some of them, or I should say most of them, have dark vision. So it's kind of a cheat with them having dark vision. They just see through the darkness for the most part in short spaces. The Kenku, once he realized that everyone is bound in this room goes to help cut out a few characters from their bindings. He releases the chameleon folk, I believe, by the name of Glenn. The party realizes that there are 2 other people in this room when they're doing their checks to get out. Amongst the rest of the party are 2 humans, they soon find out with their perceptions of the room. There are 2 humans. One is scraggly looking and just average build, and the other is pretty lean and sickly looking, to be honest. And the mouse folk was also bound to the bar. Being as tiny as he was just wrapped around the top of it. He chewed his way out of his bindings and then moved to help someone else get free. And he tries to chew through the bindings of the human man, and the human man starts to freak out because there is a vermin, as he claims, a rat or rodent or something chewing on the bindings around his hands. So he starts to try to get away from the mouse folk, and only through reassurance by the mouse folk and the other party members that he's trying to help does he allow the mouse folk to continue, while also attempting to remember how they got there. The most that is remembered overall by the party through checks of intelligence is that they were in their areas of operation beforehand and found themselves becoming tired, drowsy, and eventually blacking out. One person, however, I believe it was the paladin, remembered hearing something mystical, magical being emitted behind them as they too succumbed to being drowsy and blacking out. And they found themselves here. So our paladin gets himself free, inspects the room, while the others are helping those out with chewing and blades and strength checks and whatnot. The paladin was investigating the door. There was only one door in the room, and the door did not push open. It did not pull open, and he had a time trying to figure that out. And he finds a sconce in the wall, an unlit sconce. So he takes his torch, he lights it, and then he lights this sconce. The room lights up, and they see themselves with the torch, without night vision, without dark vision, for once. And they see the other 2 men in the room. The other 2 men are humans, one of which is the man who was being freed by the mouse folk, and the other is an unconscious man who looks a little bit more sickly. The paladin, having seen this man bound to the wooden bar, unconscious, does a sense disease and poison check. I believe it's a spell or ability for paladin. And he sees a man that has a disease, and the disease to him is identified as scurvy. While this is going on, the rest of the party is unbound. Somebody slaps the unconscious man awake, and it startles him awake. The halfling takes his torch, lights it, and then he goes to the bindings of the man to free him by burning the bindings. And while they're having a back and forth with the human characters, the paladin reveals to the party that he senses scurvy, the disease of scurvy on this man. While the halfling was freeing the sickly human, the paladin checks the door. The paladin attempts to interact with the doorway and finds that the door does not push outward or pull inward. And then through investigation finds a bar that lines the bottom of the doorway, and the door actually lifts up. The chameleon folk looks to the sickly man and makes a quick judgment. He shoots a firebolt cantrip at this man while the halfling's standing right here. This firebolt went over the head of the halfling, Janster, and it hits him dead center in the chest, killing him. The party falls into heated debate as the chameleon folk had just killed a man in front of them. And because of his positioning, the Kenku moved in behind him with a blade and held it to his throat and asked him why he killed the man. The chameleon folk Glenn said he had scurvy.
It's not catchable.
But it's because he could. Wait, it's not catchable?
No!
You just killed this dude!
Scurvy is a lack of nutrition.
You just needed some food and water.
Yeah, I was about to give this guy food and water. All he needed was fucking lemons.
Pause for 1 second.
God